All right, so the first thing I do when I show up to a flying site is I set up my windsock, because I always check the forecast, and then when you come onto the site, you want to make sure the forecast is matching your physical observations at the field. They're not always the same. Nice steady wind right now. I would say for most people, if you're looking at this as a beginner, anything over 8 might start being too much. Anything over 10 definitely is going to be too much versus being at the beach where the wind is a little bit different. You can manage 10-mile-per-hour wind there better than you could manage 10-mile-per-hour wind here. Someone who has experience and has the right equipment can comfortably fly in up to 15. I've seen people fly up to 20-mile-per-hour wind if they have the right wing to do it. Right now it's probably blowing 8-ish is my guess, 8 to 9, maybe up to 10. We have some type of front coming in. It should be arriving around 9 or 8, sometime after the sun sets. And it's coming from over those mountains. So that's all the macro forecasting that I do anytime I'm going to fly. I'm aware of the macro perspective of weather. And so I know something is coming, but all the forecast models show up till sunset, the conditions still look doable for my weight, my experience, and my equipment that I have. I don't anticipate wind being stronger than 10, so hopefully if the forecast holds that way and the observations are still the same, it's going to mellow out just a little bit before sunset and then pick up after the sun is down. That's what we're hoping for today. All right, so we have 2 different types of motors here. Fortunately for anyone getting into the sport, there are a lot of different combinations of frames, engines, harnesses. So overall, we call this the paramotor. There are a lot of different types. There's no best type. If anyone's out there talking about the best type, it's probably more of a sales pitch. So here we have 2 very different types. I weigh 180 pounds. My preferred motor right now is this one, because the engine it has on it is 185 cc's, whereas this one here is 80 cc's. Big difference in weight. This is probably 15 to 20 pounds heavier than this one. So when I fly, that also changes which paraglider I want to be on, the style of flying I'm going to do. But this one has a lot more power. And sometimes power is not your friend if you don't know how to handle or don't have throttle control to handle the thrust. It might throw off the way you're flying versus a lighter machine. But on the contrast, if you have not enough thrust and you're a heavier person, then you might struggle not having the power to take off when you actually need something more powerful. So I have both options here. You can tell there's a difference in the diameter of the hoop. So this is a standard paramotor size with a 125 centimeter prop. This is not very common. This is a 150 centimeter hoop with a 140 centimeter prop. And what this company did is they changed the drive ratios in the engine. So basically spins slower and has a higher angle of attack on the prop, and it's like catching more air but spinning slower. So at high RPM, it's going slower but providing more thrust than a standard 125 centimeter prop can. So power for power, this one still wins because it's the big engine, but this is like an upgrade to a normal 80 cc engine. Both of them are perfect for my size. Both of them can handle me. My wife weighs 120-ish and she flies an 80 cc engine, and we've trained kids. We just trained a 12-year-old actually to fly. I believe she weighed 120-ish as well, and she was trained on this engine, not this setup, but this engine. It's a good size for smaller people, but it can be maximized to people who are as heavy as I am. They're repurposed engines. When this sport started, they took them from Vespas and scooters in Europe. So they're 2-stroke. Almost all of the motors used in our sport are 2-stroke. The piston, the cylinder head, a lot of the main components you can take straight off of a scooter brand. But they repurpose the shape and the way they use the gears and stuff to spin propellers. But they are 2-stroke motorcycle engines basically. We have 2 main types of propellers here. So traditionally there's a wood propeller, and then there's carbon fiber propellers. Carbon fiber is a little more popular these days, and in the carbon fiber world there are 2 main brand types. This is called a Helix brand propeller. It's a little bit beefier, and when you go to throttle, that translation of throttle to thrust, getting this thing spooled up is just a tad bit slower than this one, which is an E-prop, because this is lighter. I don't know exact differences, but when you give it throttle, this thing turns instantly, and so you translate that feeling from wanting to give it thrust to feeling like it's pushing you. This feels instantaneous. This one gives you just a little bit of a delay, which is good for teaching. And many people prefer the feeling of this type of prop anyway. It really boils down to preference. On the high end, when you're up climbing and you're on the high end RPM of a motor and this thing is spinning, some people prefer the heavier propeller because once that mass is moving, it takes longer to slow it back down if you go off throttle versus this one. The moment you're off throttle, you pendulum a little bit because you'll feel that instant drop in power. So all of these engines are two-stroke engines, which means you fly it with fuel mixed at some ratio with oil, two strokes cycle, like motorcycle oil. Depending on the fuel you use and the brand of oil you use would be the ratio. Each oil manufacturer has their recommended numbers. I use aviation fuel personally. That's kind of controversial in our sport. It does not need aviation fuel. You can fly it with normal gas from any pump. Normal gas has ethanol, so if you're going to store it long term or not use the gas super frequently, you'll just want to be aware of the effects of ethanol and how that affects these fuel lines. So you have several fuel lines in here where fuel can maybe get stagnant and then the ethanol starts to wear on those plastics. So your other option would be non-ethanol fuel, which I don't have easy access to here in Arizona. So I went with aviation fuel, which is lead-based. It does not have ethanol, but it has lead in it. So the contrast for me is I could have lead build up after long-term use. So I have to occasionally remove the cylinder head and make sure it's not building lead deposits on my spark plug and on the cylinder head. But the advantage for me is I can store this in my house with aviation fuel and it does not smell at all like normal fuel would. Normal fuel would be stinky to have these in my house, but aviation fuel, that's why I do it. So the basic operation on any of these is going to be the same. You have a throttle. Most people have a right or a left-hand throttle that comes from the engine. I personally fly right-hand throttle on all of my motors, but I can do both. So if I borrow someone's motor, I can fly left-hand throttle as well. The throttles are basic. It's just a sump system to give it fuel. And when you throttle up, it spins the motor faster. Most of us have a tachometer or some way of measuring the total hours on our machines. The RPM, which helps us do the fine tuning when we're tuning the carburetor, and the time. Tachometers are pretty basic. All of them have a kill switch on the top, so if you push that button in flight or at any point in the operation, you turn off the motor, and that's what would terminate the propeller from spinning. Most of our engines are pull strokes, just like a lawnmower. You pull on this and that starts it up. Some motors have electronic starting system. Usually that's a separate button that you'll have on the throttle. It's really nice. It's an upgrade, but you push a button and the whole thing starts. Mine happen to just be pull, and then some of them have dual, where you have both options. You can start it with the button or pull it and start it. The harnesses that come, again, there are many different types and many brands. The main differences in a paramotor setup is something called high hang point and low hang point, and there are some mid options that are kind of both. But most high hang point motors are on some type of swiveling arm system. As you can see, both of these are low hang point systems with swing arms. And what that allows is when you're sitting in the harness, you can use your body weight to engage some movement and use your weight to shift a little bit in your steering process. So you don't have to just use the brake toggles on a paraglider. So that's the advantage of low hang point systems. I would say they're probably the most common type of paramotor setup out in the market today. But there are high hang point setups. The high hang points are usually straight arms or some form of webbing that doesn't do this. It's just fixed. One of the advantages of flying high hang points, especially for students, is you can't really do as much weight shift on it, and therefore you might, you're not inadvertently steering the paramotor with your body without knowing what you're even doing. So that's the main difference. Okay, so these harnesses are surprisingly comfortable. You can't really tell, especially with this one right now, but when the system is down, this tucks behind you, and so you stand completely in a straight position with the harness. But once you start inflating the paraglider and it loads up with weight, it does this to your swing arms because the paraglider's pulling on your carabiners, which gives this a nice little seated platform. So once you're seated in it, it's very comfortable. You're just sitting in a comfortable flying chair. And then there are several tabs you can use in flight to give it even more comfort. For example, these straps up here give it more of a cocoon type of shape, or they can release it and give it more of a slope feel. So most of us find a happy place and we keep it there. But you can release this when you're going to land, which makes it a lot easier to go back to the standing position for your landing. Or if you're going to be doing a long flight, to not fatigue your legs, you can pull these tabs in, which gives you that cocoon feeling, and it's like sitting in a hammock, just flying through the air.
As an independent team of filmmakers, we love producing documentaries for artisans of all trades, honoring skill, passion, and determination. So whether you're a garage baker, homegrown mycologist, backyard farmer, or off-grid homesteader, send us a message and share your story with the world.
You'll notice the paramotors all have a hoop. There are some paramotor designs that are fixed, where this hoop is rigid, it won't disassemble, and it has a certain amount of strength. So there's a preference here. You have heavy, strong setups, or you can go down to light but less strong setups, and so like a trade-off of weight for strength. The point of the hoop is, one, to protect your body, because the most dangerous part of our sport is this prop here on the ground. So that happens from inadvertently maybe starting it and losing control on the ground, and then people next to you and you run into people. Or but by far the most dangerous thing we do is people start this on the ground for whatever reason. It's kind of a no-no. You're not supposed to start it on the ground if you can avoid that. But I've seen people do something like this. They start it, they inadvertently throw the throttle, it presses on them, and now they're struggling as this is pushing towards them. So that's very dangerous. A lot of injuries come from contact with the propeller. So this is to try to mitigate that. But the real purpose of the hoop is in flight. So as you see, this is not super strong to stop my hand. It won't do it. But where it helps is when I'm flying and I have a paraglider connected right here, you have the lines of the paraglider, the risers, and then you have brake toggles that are here. So if at any point you let go of that brake toggle and it's not secured with a magnet or something, or this thing flexes in flight, it's to prevent the throttle and the brake toggle from touching the prop. It's really meant to stop that. So this doesn't have to be super rigid. It's just to stop things from going into the prop in flight. People might be flying using their cell phone, and when they drop it, it hits and bounces off. So it's really to stop stuff from going into the prop in flight. And then conveniently, it helps protect us too, but you're not supposed to trust this to be the protection. It's really a mindset and habits that would protect you from encountering that propeller on the ground. These can be disassembled pretty easily. So this is one section of a hoop. It's at 4 sections. So just a couple screws and pulling tabs, and this disassembles, and then I can remove the propeller, and all you have is this main frame and the engine. So that's really convenient if you want to travel with your paramotor. This one does the same thing, it disassembles, and I've actually traveled with 3 paramotors and a dog and a family of 5, all in a minivan, and we'll go down to Mexico and fly along the beach, and it's possible because these disassemble. So there are some that do not disassemble. If you don't plan on that type of travel, it's perfectly fine to have a big, strong, sturdy frame. But if you do want to travel, you might want to find something that disassembles so that you can make it a lot more compact. So the standard fuel tank on most motors is going to be around 12 liters, 10 to 12 liters. There are certain extra large fuel tanks you can put on. So this one is a 17-liter tank. This one I believe is the standard 12. Because of the engine size on this one, this burns about 5 liters of fuel per hour with my weight and the wing that I fly. This one burns 2.5 to 3. So I can afford a smaller tank with this and get about the same range. Both of them can pretty comfortably fly me for about 3 hours if I wanted to go to the top range of flight time. The trade-off is the weight. So this one fully loaded versus this one fully loaded is about 20 pounds difference on the ground. So this is a speed wing harness. Powered paragliding was born out of paragliding. So this is not a traditional paragliding harness, which is usually a little bit bigger, made for comfort, and has some form of cushion in case you fall. This is bare bones. It's made to either practice or to do speed flying or hiking and flying where you want to keep this super light. One of the things you would want if you're going to get into this sport is some form of practicing. So you can't really strap that on with a wing and practice a lot before experiencing a lot of fatigue. We use these to train and to do a lot of ground handling with a lot less weight. So I was going to show you what that's like because we have a decent amount of wind to do that. So one of the fun things about this sport is you can practice both forms of flight, the powered side, but you can also own equipment that is capable of doing non-powered flight, where you can either ridge soar in certain terrain, or you can literally just go up a hill or a mountain and run off of it with just the altitude difference as your sled ride. So most paragliders, the size of paraglider you're going to want is based on your weight. And this here is a little 14-meter wing, which is too small for almost anybody who's actually going to fly. But it's perfect size to be able to practice a couple things in higher wind and not get dragged around if you had a full-size wing, which like for me is a 20 meter or a 23 square meter wing. This is 14, so it's a lot smaller. And even though this is a practice, it's for practicing in ground handling, it's a regular paraglider. It's the exact same thing as a paraglider, but smaller. So you have your risers and then the lines that go to the wing. You have a leading edge and then a tail edge. Most wings have color codes to help you know that that's the leading edge. This is the front of the wing, and then back here would be the back of the wing. And you have brake toggles, which help you steer and control the wing. So I'm gonna get this into the wind. You'll notice I'm hooking in backwards. So I'm gonna hook in facing the paraglider because I don't need it behind me because it's too strong of wind. So I'll hook in and cross the lines, and we call that reverse hook in, so that when I inflate it and it goes up, it stays with the lines crossed, and I just keep facing it. And if at any point I was doing this with a full-size wing and a motor, then I would take off by just turning and then running in the direction of the wind. I'm gonna grab a helmet because I don't want footage of someone not wearing a helmet practicing in wind. So it's also smart to use gloves when you're kiting in higher wind, because as you can see, the wind is pretty strong. It's probably 10 gusting to maybe 12 right now. That's pretty strong to be out here kiting a full-size wing. If you don't know what you're doing, this will certainly drag you across the field. So before I hook in, I put on my helmet. I want to be safe about kiting and wind. I also put on gloves because if there's any emergency scenario where I need to grab lines, if the wind takes the paraglider while I'm grabbing lines, you can easily get rope burns. So I have gloves on just for that. So there are different techniques to handle higher wind. One of those is leaving the wing balled up in a rosette. You'll see why I do that in a second, because the moment the wind starts to go into the cells of the paraglider, it inflates really quickly and it'll come up with a lot of energy. So that gives me a little bit more reaction time to inflate it, kind of like a parachute when it comes out. It doesn't just open right away, it has stages of opening. That's what I'm doing here, letting it be rosetted up. All right, this thing's gonna come up nice and strong, and we'll see how gusty the wind feels. All right, so when you have decent wind, you can just kind of stand here and the wind is doing all the work. I don't have to maintain the inflation by moving my body. If the wind was a lot slower, I would have to be moving backwards to keep the airspeed required for this to fly. But in higher wind, this is just like flying a kite. You just stand here. There are certain inputs you can do with your body and inputs you can do with these brake toggles. So you'll notice if I pull, it goes that way. If I pull this side, it goes the other way. If I pull both, it wants to come down and die. If I let go, it could surge and it could go past the zenith point and collapse on me. So you're kind of constantly controlling what the wing is doing in higher wind or in gustier wind. Now, if I was actually going to fly in conditions like this, once the wing is up and you turn, now you're clear to do the forward movement and flying. So this is a reverse and this is a forward. Caught here. There we go. So that would be forward. The other thing with this much wind, if I had the motor on my back and I'm getting pulled back, imagine all the weight of that motor. It's real easy to fall backwards and get stuck in what we call turtle position, where you're literally just stuck on your back on that frame and you can't get yourself out. You'd have to unclip. So that's why anytime we're in higher wind, we want to be facing the wing because we can take stronger inputs facing it forward. The other way to control this wing is that weight shift I was talking about. Basically, whichever way my back is facing, the wing wants to fly. So if I do that, it wants to fly that way. And then I have to forcefully steer it back. But if I go to just neutral, it wants to go that way. So I can steer it back, always wants to follow my back. So that's something we teach in training. You want someone to become very proficient at ground handling. All right, I'm gonna bring the wing down one more time to show you something called Cobra launch. So here, I'm steering it with my back to where it wants to fly up that way, but I'm forcefully pulling brakes to keep it down. So that allows me to inflate the wing, not fully into the wind until I want it to. And I do that by just keeping my back at it and letting go of the brakes and giving it just a little bit of air and it'll swing right in. Here we go. So that's a gentle way to get the wing up instead of going straight into the wind, which looks like this. This would be straight into the wind and it comes up super energized and can be very aggressive and dangerous if you have all your gear on and you don't control the surge. See how it comes up? I have to stop it right away. It's a lot more gentle to do the side Cobra style where you get it out of the wind line and steer it back into the zenith. It's a lot more gentle way of getting it into the air. So these are all skills that you learn without the motor. You learn by being out in windy conditions with small paragliders. And that translates later when you're flying a full-size paraglider to being more successful and efficient and not breaking equipment when you're flying in higher condition wind. All right, set it down out of the wind. So in high wind like this, the moment you set it down, you want to get out of the wind line so it de-powers that wing. And if a gust grabs it and throws it right now, I have to be ready to respond to that. So that's why we have helmets when we're kiting in wind, and I don't let go of the brakes until I have fabric. Once I have control of the wing, now if the wind grabs it, it can't inflate it because I have control of the fabric. So now I can put these brakes in their magnets, effectively losing fear of that taking off. And then to really be safe, you unclip right away. And now if the wind takes the wing, I let go of the wing and it doesn't take me as well. Another reason to wear gloves. Dealing with the lines and the wind, it puts a lot of pressure on those ropes. And see how even closed, it grabs that wind and it wants to manipulate and take the wing. So all of this kind of stuff, you do it downwind so the wind cannot get inside these cells. It pinches it across your body. Then once you have fabric, you're safe. How do you keep it from getting tangled? It's surprisingly less complex than it ever feels. So this looks kind of like a rat's nest of lines. I always tuck a little bit of fabric so that I can remember where I had it. As long as these risers, which is the end of your lines, don't go through in any part of the process, if you can always keep them separate, you'll never have an issue. But sometimes you lose control while you're paragliding and then it drops on you and the lines fall and now you're tangled. It's like if I threw this through the lines and it's just a mess. It can be very intimidating for somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience to think, how do I untangle this? Each one of these lines is tied in at a malleon point, and it could be tempting for a beginner or someone without a lot of friends or experience in the sport to say, I'm going to start untying these and rerunning lines. Never do that. Because it's tied in here and it's tied in there at all these points, it cannot be super complex to undo it. It's just tricky. So it's going to be hard to show you here in the wind, but you'd go home, you'd go somewhere safe, out of the wind, and you would open the paraglider, stretch these lines, and all you have to do is start from the top of the paraglider and find the leading edge lines. We call those the A lines. So you would find the center A line, and you would just follow that A line all the way till you get to a riser. And all along the way, if there are tangles, so this is what it would look like. At some point, you would find this line and you would follow it all the way to here. If there are tangles, it's going to look like this at the end. Your hand goes through all the tangles and then you just pull the tangles out to where you're holding this. And then you separate that line over your neck or something, and then you would do the second line. By the time you do the second one, everything comes into place. It's just clearing two lines and all the other lines come clear after that. So there are a lot of good videos on YouTube of people doing that. Just find a video or ask a friend for help, but I guarantee it's a lot less complex than you think it is when you're there thinking something impossible happened with the lines. It really didn't, because they can't untie here and they can't untie there. So it's not super, nothing magic happened. It'll undo itself. All right. So that's a 14 meter. If the conditions stay the same and I fly, you'll see a 20 meter wing, which is still considered kind of small in the overall paramotor world. A lot of our beginner pilots are flying 23 all the way to maybe 30 meter wings based on their weight. But in general, the bigger the paraglider, the slower it flies and the more lift you get out of less speed. So you can run slower and get more speed or more lift than someone on a smaller wing has to go faster to get the same lift. So in general, smaller wings are for lighter pilots or more experienced pilots, and bigger wings are for heavier and more beginner pilots. So right now, the conditions we're looking at, I know something's coming from over there and that it's gonna arrive after sunset. So just knowing that means it could come before sunset. So flying tonight, if I assess it and figure I'll do it, it's really just because of this situation. I wouldn't drive here to fly tonight looking at the forecast if it was just for me for fun. And I definitely would not have met anyone for instruction purposes, because it's past the window for any student pilot to get any benefit from playing in this wind. The advantage of higher wind for someone who does have experience, and maybe you'll see this if I fly, I'm gonna go really fast that direction, but when I face into the wind, it's really slow. And I can use a certain amount of brake pressure and feather the amount of thrust and make myself pretty much like a kite. I can just hover in the wind, or I can give it power and a little brakes and go straight up like an elevator instead of moving forward. I can control the pitch, so it's more like a helicopter going up and down. And then my landings will be like a bird. You just come in any point you want, and it'll be like the softest landing ever if I'm playing in wind like this. One of the most important pieces of equipment in the arsenal of someone flying is your helmet. The helmet serves two purposes. The main one is to protect your head in a fall, and that could be kiting, ground handling, or it could be literally a fall or a crash from flying. So that's the main purpose, but it also serves the purpose of protecting our ears. Almost all helmets have some form of ear protection. The muffs themselves are just a way to dampen the decibels that you're hearing, but a lot of nice helmets have some form of communication system built in. So you can have a two-way, like a 2-meter radio. That way you can talk to people on the ground through radio or people in the air. And then if you really want to get fancy, you can have Bluetooth type of connectivity that connects to your phone. So for me, for example, with this helmet, I can connect to my phone, take phone calls, listen to music, all the things that my phone can do. Plus, on top of it, I can hear radio at the same time. And then there's even one layer more of fanciness, if you want, in a helmet, which would be aviation capable radios. I don't have one. I don't think they're necessary. But if you're already comfortable on aviation radio, say you're a pilot and you have experience talking to the tower, there are places where we can request permission and fly inside of airspace if you have that aviation capability on the radio. But for most of us, we don't use it, and if we do, we can make phone calls to the tower. But there are several layers of communication capabilities on helmets.
Hire us to tell your story. As an independent team of filmmakers, we love producing documentaries for artisans of all trades, honoring skill, passion, and determination.
The fruits of our labor literally creates happiness.
Founded in 2020, we harness our collective experience and enthusiasm for storytelling to deliver content that resonates with viewers on every level.
Think big and think outside of the box.
We avoid the constant noise of clickbait news and outrage headlines, instead crafting more intimate narratives that touch on the purpose of life itself. Stories that not only inform but also inspire. Whether it's the art of agriculture, the science of fermentation, an innovative garage startup, or the intricacies of off-grid living, we're here to explore it all and invite you to join us in the discovery.
You're just working with what you have at hand instead of having unrealistic expectations.
We know the world is brimming with hidden stories waiting to be told. These are tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.
The biggest thing is to realize that there's nothing that you can't do.
Embodying the American spirit that with hard work, dreams really can come true. So whether you're a garage baker, homegrown mycologist, backyard farmer, or off-grid homesteader, send us a message and share your story with the world.